Hey folks, it's your main man E, and I just wanted to talk about why you're not going to ever see me, or if you hire me to train your dog, I'm never going to suggest or support you using a cheap off-brand remote collar or electronic collar that you got on Amazon. And I'm going to tell you like 3 reasons why, okay? The first reason, first and foremost, is you're dealing with something that could potentially deliver a very high electrical shock to your dog. This could be painful. And this dog here in front of me, when I first got her, I got a cheap remote collar on Amazon. I didn't know anything. I put it on her. I pushed a button and the thing continuously shocked her. The button got held down and it was just continuously shocking my dog. Now, I've used hundreds of remote collars from name brand collars. I've never had that happen once, okay? So the main, first and foremost reason is the stuff that's on Amazon that's cheap. It's just cheap stuff. There is no quality control. There is no brand that really needs to make sure they are producing quality products because they don't want that affecting their reputation. No, these are just companies that they make a remote collar, and if it gets a bad reputation, they sell it under a different brand name. So that's the first thing. I'm not going to cheap out or suggest anybody cheaps out on something that could potentially harm your dog. It's not worth however much money you're going to save, okay? The second reason is because cheap remote collars, they don't have the features that you have on an expensive remote collar. When we're using remote collars, it's so important that we're making contact if we're using the electrical stimulation aspect of the collar in any way, shape, or form. The collar, it has to be making contact. Those electrodes have to be touching the dog's neck. Now, these cheap collars you get on Amazon, they don't have custom contact points for the variety of different furs that you have with dogs. And so like a dog like Kai here, an Akita mix with a lot of thick fur, that remote collar you got on Amazon, it's not going to make contact through all of her fur. And you're going to be thinking she's feeling it or she's ignoring it or you're not using it at a high enough level. The reality is she never felt the remote collar. And I've had people come to me and tell me their dog was ignoring it and they only paid attention at this level. It wasn't on tight enough. It was completely unfair to the dog. And so that's why I don't do cheap remote collars. They don't have custom contact points to make sure it makes contact. Now, the other reason those contact points are so important is because a lot of this stuff made in China these days, it has nickel in the contact points. And that nickel actually will create a skin allergy in your dog. And that could create very scary looking blisters. And so I don't suggest anybody use cheap remote collars or even cheap contact points in their remote collars because you can get pressure sores. And to me, the extra $10 or $20 you're going to spend for hypoallergenic contact points, it's worth every penny. Okay, and that brings me to the next thing. They don't necessarily have custom straps for these cheap collars. Now, whenever I use a remote collar with a dog, I like there to be a little bit of a bungee on the strap so that the strap can stretch a little bit. And I also like to have a collar that has a quick, like a clip to clip it on and off so that I know I'm putting it on the same tightness on the dog's neck every time. And if I am putting it on too tight, I can make an adjustment. And if anybody else needs to use the collar, I'm going to be sure they're putting it on the right tightness. Like I was talking about earlier, folks, contact is so paramount. And if you don't have a collar with a little bit of a bungee that stretches a little, you may not be willing to put it on your dog tight enough and feel good about that. It may not even be possible to have it on tight enough without it at some point, becoming too tight because the dog got excited or they flexed their neck like this, and then the collar is too tight. So those custom straps are something that's really only available for high-end remote collars. In that I'm going to be sure they're going to use with the remote collar. The final reason that I don't use cheap remote collars or Amazon remote collars is, guys, I don't have the time or the resources to learn how every remote collar works to really understand if it's level 1 to 10, how strong is level 1, how strong is level 2, how strong is level 5. On some of these cheaper collars, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're not equally powerful. So you may find 1, 2, and 3 are low, and you go to 4, and 4 is this crazy level of shock. Now, unless you put the remote on yourself, on your neck, and you felt it at a variety of levels, you wouldn't know that there's not consistency. And so I only use remote collars where I have personally felt how strong the various levels are. I understand that there is consistency when you turn up the levels, that they're consistently going up so that there's not like a jump. If I go from one level to the next, there's not going to be a huge jump and the dog's going to be startled, or I'm going to be startled. So for me to sit here and test every remote collar, try every remote collar, figure out how they equate to the numbers that I've used on hundreds of dogs in the past, it's not practical. And also it's not even possible because there's no quality control in cheap remote collars. You could get one remote collar and level 2 feels like a light tingling. You could get the exact same collar from the exact same brand and level 2 is like a serious shock. And so unless it's a company that's got quality control, that has a reputation to stand by, I wouldn't expect that the collars, the different collars, would even be consistent in the way that they're functioning. So those are the reasons why I don't suggest anybody use a cheap remote collar from Amazon. I would suggest you get a collar from eCollar Technologies. That is, in my opinion, the best brand for the average pet trainer in terms of all of the extra features they have and upgraded contact points, upgraded collar straps, and all that stuff. And that actually brings me to a final point, which I didn't mention, which is a lot of these cheap collars, they don't even have the features that I might use with a particular dog. You know, the eCollar Technologies collars, there are so many features, which I'm not going to go into on this video. There are so many features and extra ways the collar can be used that you don't have on cheap collars, okay? Whether that's the ability to, have one button set where it turns the collar up very quickly in case of an emergency, whether that's to have one button set at a low level and one button set at a high level. So if in case of emergency, you could push this button, it'll go at a high level. And the list goes on. So if you're questioning at all why you should buy a cheap remote collar or you should buy an expensive remote collar, folks, don't go cheap on something that could potentially cause harm to your dog and even potentially harm your relationship with the dog. And although maybe you'll get some semblance of progress and things might improve, the reality is you're limited in the way you're going to be able to use that remote collar. So I hope you found this video helpful. And remember, as always, we don't blame them. We train them. You can always find me online if you want to hire me for training. FollowTheLeaderCanine.com. And you can find my poetry book online too, Loving, Leading, and Losing, Stories from the Dogs That Trained Me. I hope you're having a good day. We'll see you next time.